Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Talk Junkies. We've had a little bit of a break here. It's been a week or 2 weeks since we've done a podcast. I took a little vacation last week with the family out to Branson, Missouri, where it's beautiful and it's very mountainous. Like, if you can consider,
it's pretty hilly.
It's
pretty hilly.
Well, they're little baby mountains. Okay.
Yeah, those are called hills.
Yes, or little baby mountains. But anyways, we have the pleasure again to bring on John Klyczek. He's the author of The School World Order, The Technocratic Globalization of Corporatized Education. Again, we've had him on the podcast before. His book's right here. I believe, John, you reached number 21 bestseller on Amazon for your book in the genre that it's in, so that's impressive. The dude's very knowledgeable. He's been on many podcasts throughout YouTube, and currently he's going to let us know that he's actually a part of a documentary. I don't know if you're actually doing the documentary, but I know you're in one. The dude is involved in so many things. He's a teacher. He's teaching the American citizens. He's everywhere. He's awesome. Thanks for joining, John. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing? It's good to be back. It was fun last time, yeah.
That it was, man. Before we get into a few of the topics, I know Johnny has a question, but I wanted to ask you one question. I know this. What are your thoughts on what is the end goal of the censorship that's happening right now in America? I mean, with the right versus the left, maybe not necessarily the tribalistic aspect of it, but what is going on with the censorship, and why is it hard to have videos like this be sent to the masses? Why aren't they wanting to do that?
Well, I mean, a lot of what we talk about is sort of, I guess, maybe the authoritarian bent of a lot of the changes that are coming with COVID, maybe pitched as, for the greater good, the common good, safety, security, things like that. But, so when we critique those things, maybe it slows down other companies and maybe government organizations that would like to benefit or profit from the crisis. So it's almost a cliche. I think Rahm Emanuel said it one time. Never let a good crisis go to waste. And we're going to talk about the order of skull and bones today. So we're going to talk about the Hegelian dialectic. And that's colloquially known as problem, reaction, solution. So basically create a problem so you can steer the outcome posed as the savior with your predetermined solution, which is going to benefit your company or your government or your public-private partnership between both. So the censorship is probably, to prevent these types of conversations from slowing that down. Interestingly, if anybody has, are you all aware of Event 201?
100%, yeah.
I'm not.
So
Me
Event
either.
201 was a simulation that was run by Johns Hopkins University, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the World Economic Forum. It was run in November of last year, and they were doing a simulation on a coronavirus pandemic. And the simulation,
no, I have heard of this. I didn't know it was called Event 201, but I know exactly what you're talking about, actually.
Okay, so yeah, and so what you would think when I hear that, and you can go and Google this, just watch it on YouTube. You can actually watch the simulation that they presented, and if I say that, probably what goes in your mind, which goes through my mind, the simulation is going to be like a simulation of like charts, algorithms change over time of infection rates, right, based on different conditions over the period of the pandemic. That's not what the simulation, if you watch it, focused on. The simulation was really a simulation of how in non-governmental organizations in partnership with governments, business, and media were going to manage this crisis. And they have this round table of all those group members pitching these ideas about how to manage the crisis, and not just the infection rates, but they literally, what the simulation was they had like fake news reports while these people sat around a table, and during the news reports they would say, it sounds almost, you have to watch it to see, I'm not kidding you, it's like almost identical to what's the responses that they've had. And part of that in that simulation was how to deal with misinformation or fake news based on coronavirus. So in other words, the censorship that's happening now was part of that simulation several months before supposedly anybody knew about COVID. And a funny thing about that presentation, if you watch it, Michael Ryan of the World Health Organization, he's the guy that was suggesting that it might be necessary to take people out of their homes. He uses the term the new normal in November of last year. So is the new normal after we found out about COVID in February, March? Or is the new normal in November before it happened, when they simulated it? So
it was November. They already coined the term. They were already ready.
Precisely, right? And so, in other words, the censorship is probably to prevent people from, stopping what is a very, very much a purposeful agenda and pre-planned.
And the biggest thing that I noticed about that, what did you call it? I didn't know what it was called. I know, like I said, I know what you're talking about. What was it called?
Event 201.
Okay, the biggest thing that I noticed about the little bit that I've seen on that is that it was really reaction based. Like, it was very like people's reactions and not so much the cause and effect of the disease. Like, the simulation was not, hey, how does this disease affect us? What's going on? How can we stop spreading all this different stuff? It was very much like people based. Like, how does the public view this that's happening right now? Which was really weird.
Yeah, so that's why you have to watch. Like, anybody that thinks it sounds crazy, just watch that and watch the one that's published by I think it's Johns Hopkins is the channel that it's on, because they're the primary ones that ran it in partnership with Bill and Melinda Gates and the World Economic Forum. And then you have the World Economic Forum announce their Great Reset right afterwards. And what is it? It's all this technocratic, authoritarian stuff that is pitched as a way to, fight COVID, and they literally say to facilitate equity through corporate governance. This is their words, So in the same, not only did they have Event 201, but they, the World Economic Forum then rolls out the solution. So problem, COVID, reaction, Fourth Industrial Revolution / Great Reset. And then you have other documents like the Rockefeller Foundation's, I think it's the title, something like Innovating Strategies for the Future, but it's Operation Lockstep is the scenario that they run in there. It's a 2010 document. Have you all heard about that one?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, so this is it's rolling out basically the same stuff. So they go through these different scenarios of how they would handle this pandemic, and one of them is called Operation Lockstep, or the Lockstep scenario, and it's all about how I'm going to paraphrase. It's a pretty close quote. There were authoritarian measures that were used to mitigate the effects of the virus, but authoritarian regimes and even more democratic regimes used the crisis to continue increasing those authoritarian measures even after the crisis was over. And so, we're seeing people talk about, the infection rates are still going up, but the death rates have basically petered out. Okay, we were stalled in the 180,000s for several weeks. It was going thousands a day, and so as far as that, they wanted to flatten that curve. It's pretty flat, okay. But we still got the masks. They're still talking about which phases we're in. I went to visit Charlotte Iserbyt. We were doing a documentary thing down there, another company, and when I drove through New York, my phone went off. Beep, beep, beep. When it was emergency, like it was a tornado warning. It sounded like when I was going to use the emergency. It told me I was driving through a COVID hotspot. Basically, it was warning me. I don't know, not to get. I didn't have time to read it. I was driving. I looked at it because it was really loud. I don't know, it was telling me to, not get out of the car or what. I don't know.
That sounds like something from a movie, man. That's like some oh, hey, by the way, there's zombies here. Be careful, zombie spot.
Well, not only that, that's happening in New York now. It's eventually going to spread to all the other states.
That's just crazy to hear.
That's insane. And then I don't know how you want to do it. I mean, we're already kind of in the COVID conversation right now. I don't know if you want to continue that, or do you want to go right into the skull and bones? I think, and it's not necessarily, I just want to kind of just shed light to our listeners that are watching this right now, is the simple fact that, like John had just described in our conversation, is that we are entering into an authoritarian regime, is what it seems like, and it only seems like it's progressing. I know here we're in the middle of America right now, and we really don't see it. The city that we live in, our local city decided to not make masks mandated.
We see it less than everybody else.
which is fine, but even watching the NFL games today and all the commercials that they have for, like IBM had a commercial, and anytime someone was inside their house with their family, they weren't wearing a mask, but when they were outside or they were at a job, they were wearing a mask. You know what I'm saying? And I just slowly see this happening, and it's funny that you bring up the fact that you were driving in New York and an Amber Alert basically went off on your phone saying, hey, you're in a COVID hotspot. That's going to hit everyone in all 50 states, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like to hear though that your state is actually moving in the other direction. So I gotta always believe that there's room to wiggle still. That there's that's why we have states, and it's not just one big monolith. So that way if one state gets out of hand, people can move out of the state, and and then that state can go, I just lost my tax base, and hopefully maybe change suit, and and the other states can benefit, but
That's like what I've always said about the whole states thing and moving, and just like if you don't agree with what's going on in your state, the whole point is move to a different one. That's why states have different rights and different laws. We've talked about. I'm digressing into a different topic right now with the whole like federal government and the like states' rights and all this. But no, basically what you just said about like if you don't like it, move to a different state, and that's how it should be. That's how our world should. That's how the United States should be. Is like they should have different laws, different things that you can follow, and ignoring coronavirus completely, just in general.
Yeah, and the funny thing, I'm hoping other people have thought about it and will start to use this option. But it's kind of like in jujitsu or any martial art. Every move has a counter. Every counter has a counter. So when you commit to one technique, however good you are at it, you necessarily open yourself up to counters. So they lock us down and make us go all virtual. Well, you can take your job with you now. You don't have to tell them either. At first, you can just get out of town, take the job with you at least for a time while you look for another job, especially if you got auto deposit, right? And, when you find it, you actually have your employment in that other state. And in the meantime, you can hopefully use that part of the flexibility against the system. So, I like to think that, there's ways to incentivize the authoritarian states, or more authoritarian, because we all went to lockdown at some point. But hope there's ways to incentivize them that don't involve all the civil unrest that we've been seeing. Something simple like moving to another state. Like opening your business anyway, stuff like that.
So you don't see it progressing. I mean, we all want to see a ray of sunshine. I'm all for it. And again, the city that we live in, I'm very blessed that all the places that you enter for the most part, whether it's a business or not, you have to wear a mask for the most part. I'd say 90% or more are that way. But within your own research, have you seen it progress? Like with COVID happening, have you seen authoritarianism take an increase more so than you have in the past 20 or 30 years?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, like the trajectory looks like there's more, force moving in that direction than the opposite. But it's, as somebody that, once upon a time it was like, okay, just got to get this book out, got to actually get this information out. Now I got this information out. Now it's actually just accelerating all the time. I can't even keep up with it. But at least have the base. So, but now it's to the point where it's like, okay, so now, how can I actually, use this information to at least slow this down if it can't be stopped. So, I try to emphasize those. But let's see, authoritarian stuff. I would say that that contact tracing is the beginning of social credit. And I don't know if we talked about it. Did we talk about it?
We did.
Absolutely, we did.
Okay, so I don't want to hash over the same thing. Did I talk about some of the mechanisms for that, as far as the software that they use in the schools or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about we talked about gamifying some stuff, and I just remember us talking about the social credit thing because I specifically brought up the nosedive episode of Black Mirror, and then we
Right. Okay. I don't know if I have anything extra. Let's just say that aside from there's three aspects to it, okay, that I would say, at least at the school level, that would be the adaptive learning software, which is going to data mine the thinking algorithms, the social emotional learning wearables, biofeedback wearables. They're going to data mine their emotions or their feeling algorithms. And then they don't have it quite here yet, but, as they start to mandate, COVID testing and other health services into, community schools or other public-private partnerships, especially to, service the COVID situation, something called precision education, which is going to give you your lessons based on your DNA proclivities, and it basically is rooted in eugenics.
So how are they going to do that?
So precision education relates to something called precision medicine. So precision medicine, they have the Precision Medicine Initiative started during the Obama era and with the NIH, and it basically wants to personalize your healthcare based on your DNA or your genetics. Okay, so they had I think it's something like one for all, but they wanted to have start with a sample of 1 million people that they wanted to not just have their genetic markers for different disease proclivities, but they also wanted to look at like epigenetic change or epigenetics. And so they wanted them to have wearables. This guy Eric Dishman was in charge of the wearables, and so monitor their biofeedback in addition to their DNA and how their daily lifestyles affected, right? Maybe whether those DNA proclivities would trigger, right? So if you supposedly if you have a genetic propensity to something, it's usually on a percentile rate, and that can be exacerbated by your daily activities. So they wanted to use wearables and then use all this, right, constant data mining of your biology to basically then give you pharmaceuticals or other gene therapies that are just tailored specifically for you based on all this data, your wearable data, your DNA data. So in education, it largely focuses on IQ as a genetic thing, right? And so they want to make the argument that IQ is genetic, like it has to do with the physiology of the brain, and in that regard, it is eugenics. So.
Be real quick, but sorry, Jesse. Have they tested these wearables anywhere or in any schools, or is it currently going on right now?
So wearables, just for social, and you can take that data and you can aggregate it with the DNA stuff. It's almost two separate sets, and you're just looking at the correlations between the two over time. But yeah, I mean, in the sense that wearables that they actually have and have issued for classes. Let's see. Well, in China, they definitely have, and they have these in the schools. One is called BrainCo, and it's an EEG headband, like a bracelet, so it measures your brain waves, your EEG waves, and then they also have facial recognition cameras that watch like where your eyes are and are you paying attention. But based on your EEGs, it's gonna, it's gonna tailor the lesson to either, help you focus more or challenge you more or something like that. And then there's a similar device in the U.S. It's not been, like mandated in a classroom anywhere, but it's called the NeuroCore company, and it's Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Education, is one of the main investors in the company. She was on the board of directors, but she had to drop that before she became secretary. And it does the same thing, and she pitches it as having you can treat like ADHD and other like focus issues in terms of learning. So those are two of the types of wearables. Then the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they had spent a bunch of money on something called galvanic skin response monitors. So the kids would wear these bracelets that would measure their skin conductivity to see, are they engaged? And people didn't like that at all. That was, I want to say 2010, around that time, maybe 2012 or something. So that didn't really pick up because people got wind of it and they were like, what? But those are 3 examples, and then you got a company called Effectiva, and it does similar wearables and facial recognition algorithms. The funny thing about Effectiva, it's either Effectiva or Icke. I want to say it's Effectiva. It's one of the two. I think Icke is for the prescription ADHD video games that are still based on the biofeedback. But the one or the other, I'm just going to say Effectiva is the algorithms that they use are based on the behavioral personalized advertising algorithms that they use for all those, that's in your Facebook stuff when you're, or whatever social media you use. So you're on those devices and they're tracking your cookies to see what products you like. And then later you're on that platform and you see an ad for that. So that same type of algorithm is used, or that company likes to say this, that company makes those types of algorithms and the ed tech algorithms. So I'm going to infer that they're largely based on the same incentive, the same.
Just really, really quick, John. You have these type of sciences coming in and being influenced into society. They're either, no matter what, like science comes in and we test things, right? I'm gonna try to play the devil's advocate just really quick. So you start testing all of these things. Now morality at some point comes into play. As far as whether or not we should or we shouldn't start doing these things. As far as the moral side of things, why shouldn't we be doing these things? And in this style of, testing. Because no matter what, the technology's there. We're able to do it. And humans, we say, fuck it, we're gonna do it. So where does morality set in somewhere and go, hey, we need to push back here and redecide, man, we need to rethink this as far as our approach scientifically. And there needs to be limits within science in some way, but.
Yeah, no. So this is why at the, when my publisher asked me to come up with solutions, we talked a lot about this. I got all philosophical and stuff, which is cool. There had to be some kind of transcendent values before you start measuring things, because without that, it's all about efficiency, right? And so, science is empiricism. Empiricism is just measurement. In other words, it's a posteriori reasoning. I mean, the key word of the root here is post, meaning knowledge comes after observation, or right in science after measurement, after the scientific method, right? So, but like you said, I mean, data is just data until you decide how you're going to apply it. At that point, you're into the realm of ethics, right? And in the realm of ethics, you need something that's called metaphysics. Metaphysics means first principles. It's not necessarily all that stuff in the New Age store. It just means the study of first principles. So, you could call it God or the Tao or the Logos or the Urta or the Dharma or whatever. Or, if you're an atheist or an agnostic, you could call it the golden rule, right? Or what Kant called the categorical imperative. But it's this idea that a priori, prior to measurement, you have certain transcendent values or morals or beliefs that guide how you measure what you do with the measurements. And, in the Bill of Rights, we have things like privacy, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, right? Freedom of expression, the right to self-defense, and then reciprocal, meaning you can't do those things to other people just like they can't do them to you, right? And this is based on a priori methods, right? In science, right, what you're getting at is, first of all, privacy, one of those rights, those are violated for the sake of efficiency, or what they might consider the greater good of technological evolution. They might even call it the evolution of our species, because some of these people are transhumanists or post-humanists, and they believe that they're hardcore evolutionists, meaning that we have to. They want to get to the next stage, which is merging with machines.
Okay, so can I ask you a really quick question? Is that not inevitable?
Because
you already have a phone.
It's a form of evolution.
You already have your phone. I'm talking to you through the internet and technology, and this is interconnecting us. So it's really hard to debate almost on that point. But whether or not it's used for good and evil, that's kind of my motive. But I want to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say I'm not a Luddite, which were these people that like the first anti-technology people that, went around smashing machines because they thought it was going to, kind of a lot of the same.
Y2K is going to kill us all.
Yeah, Luddites.
I was born in 91. I remember that shit.
C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, they were appalled by the automobile. They thought that neither of them ever drove an automobile. And I think about that sometimes as like you say, like we don't think of cars as transhumanism, but if you think about I don't know too many people in the United States that can live without a car. You know what I mean? You got to get most stuff is not set up for you to be able to walk, and then if they don't have horse and buggy anymore. So that's kind of I don't want to say that every form of that union with or that usefulness of technology is necessarily the same type of transhumanism or this type of post-human evolution. I like to say there's a way that we integrate it where we still remain human. Like it is a tool that we use to help us. It's not something that we use to replace things that are fundamentally human about us because of some ideology that humans are, so flawed or imperfect or backward that we have to be improved to this next thing to be able to be of some value.
No.
Which I think is
What you just said is the thin line though. You talked about it's a tool kind of thing, and it's not transhumanism. It's a tool to allow us to achieve a higher education and knowledge and all this. And that's all I'm saying is that's the thin line though. Is you have to be careful where you cross that. Is your phone a tool? Is something that you use on a daily basis that's required in our society now? You have to have a phone to do a job interview half the time. You have to have a phone to be able to call back to something. You have to have a phone to look stuff up or internet access in whatever way. So in a sense, it is a tool, but you got to be careful because there's that line where you cross where it's like, now it's a part of us. Now it's connected to us, and it's something that we have to survive.
Yeah, I think if we have we use those, the Bill of Rights and things like that as a hard line for, the boundaries that say, these are the things we cannot do with this, which by the way, I mean, we've way past that. So, good luck putting that genie, that toothpaste back in the bottle. But still moving forward, I think, like you don't have to be too careful about thinking about each technology separately, as long as you use guiding principles. That's the whole idea of principles, right? Because you can't manage every little data point unless you start putting it into larger data sets, under certain principles. But, I would say one thing that I would probably always, and this, it's just personal maybe. I am not interested in any biotech, certainly not any neurotech. Now I gotta say, maybe I might be slightly. I have. Can you see that? You can see those scars. I got steel in here. All right, I got steel plates, and I always forget that. So it's like, I'm kind of right. I'm kind of transhuman already. I just don't have computers in there. So, again, I don't.
Same shit in my ankle, brother. Same shit in my ankle, and I got it too.
Yeah, and let's say I had the whole thing removed. By the way, I got a bicep injury here where it's not as strong as it used to be. But if let's say I was missing part of it, I don't know that I would say no to the to like an actual prosthetic. I don't know that. So it's also like what's the proverb, metaphor, whatever you want to call it. Talk about the old boats and the new boat, meaning or the old, repairing the old boat piece by piece.
Oh, that's
ship of thesis.
Yeah,
or theasis? Is it theasis?
It's theasis.
I can never pronounce it.
Oh,
like if you're to switch shit out.
I didn't know there was a particular term for it. I'm just thinking of that metaphor for. But yeah, I mean, it is this logical concept or paradox. It's also like they do another one with like, at what point is a you get start with a grain of sand, you got 2 and 3. At what point does it become a pile? This type of thing, right? But so you're replacing you got an old boat and it's falling apart, and you replace one piece, replace another. At what point is it a brand new boat, right? At what point have you lost the essence of the original? I don't.
The easiest one is it's called the grandfather's axe, which is the same exact thing. There's an axe, it's got a wooden handle, and then it's got the blade. If one summer you chip the blade and have to replace it, and then the next summer you break the axe in half and you have to replace the handle, is it still your grandfather's axe? Both parts completely different. The whole thing's different. Is it still your grandfather's axe, though? That's the Shipatheasis or whatever.
Right. And so, so personally, like, I don't really have an answer about where the line, you know what I mean, on this whole spectrum. Because like you said, we're all in it. We're all hooked up to all kinds of devices. I got metal in my arm. I drive a car. But I would say that,
have you heard about the linemen putting magnets in their fingers now? Like, that's a thing that's been going on for the last 4 or 5 years. Is electrical workers are getting magnets surgically installed into one of their fingertips, and you can tell by the vibration in your finger if a wire is live or not.
Wow, I didn't hear about that, but I'm not surprised because I know that there's companies that are using incentivizing some of their higher level employees to have RFID chips to get into access. Yeah, so.
But one thing I know 100% is that given humanity an opportunity with technology, we will fuck that shit up and abuse it and abuse the hell out of it, and then make it to where it's financially resonant to some small group, and then everybody else suffers because of it.
We've proved that with what he brought up earlier, which you were talking about the personalized, what'd you call it? Not the personalized testing, the personalized education.
Yeah, the precision education.
Thank you. Precision education. In theory, that should be a good thing. In theory. You talk about how, hey, Paul, we can tell genetically, that you're bad at reading and writing, but you're really good at math and science. So we can target your education to make you better at reading and writing and better at science all at the same time, and base our education around your needs instead of the mass public. Like, in theory, it sounds good. In theory, it works. It's like what Einstein said about judging a fish about its ability to climb a tree. Like, it may be really good at swimming, but it can't climb a tree because it's a fucking fish. Like, you can target stuff, but we don't use it for that reason. We use it for the stuff you talked about earlier, which is advertisement and money and programming people to do things in a certain way.
And to turn us into robots, basically.
Yeah, but I'm saying in theory, I'm playing
being a
devil's
robot
advocate.
sounds really fucking cool, by the way.
I'm saying in theory that the whole the precision education and the eugenics targeted education.
Robot dick sounds cool.
The eugenics education makes sense in theory.
My bad. That was all comedy. That was all comedy, John. I'm sorry.
No, you're all good, man. You're all right, man. You're right. Threw me off. Okay, so this goes back to what I was saying about efficiency. Without transcendent values, efficiency becomes the ultimate a priori value or purpose, right? And so that's what that. If you think in terms of efficiency, and that's when you can start thinking, it is efficient or effective to get rid of genes that slow you down at certain things, or maybe have you using energy in ways that might not be as efficient if you focused on other things based on your DNA. But the whole thing about that, though, is that genetics, which by the way was always, the whole thing was eugenics until that word became a 4-letter word, and then they hid it. I didn't learn about it until I was this is embarrassing. I was almost I was a senior in college, and this is one of the things that really got me starting to research a lot of this stuff, because you get a lot of stuff from in academia. It's very left oriented, and so you get a lot of social justice stuff, in particular racial justice stuff. And it was bizarre that nobody ever mentioned eugenics, which has to be the most racist thing you could ever think of. It's because the underlying ideology was Darwinian, and it was evolutionary, and that is a keystone of academia. So, right, they want to keep that eugenic stuff in there and maybe just call it genetics. So, but in genetics, look, there are certain things that are heritable that you can prove pretty precisely, right? Even when they used to do the Punnett squares, you guys remember the Punnett squares?
Oh yeah, like blue eyes and red hair and all that kind of stuff. I remember that.
Absolutely, and that is entirely imprecise compared to modern genetics, right, and genomics. But you could still predict pretty effectively.
It was like 75. It was like 75% accuracy for like dominant versus recessive traits and like basic stuff like blue eyes and blonde hair, stuff like that.
Absolutely, we're talking about like very surface level traits, right? Like those types of things. But when you started to get into like mental health conditions, and they tried to make correlations between your proclivities to not just how smart you are in terms of IQ and brain capacity, which also had another pseudoscience connected to it called phrenology. So they look at the shape of your skull and say, oh, your brain is this shape and this size, so you can you have these tendencies or these abilities. And then they had physiognomy, which basically looked at other parts of your facial features. Two of those have been largely thrown out, although you can actually look at academic journals nowadays that are saying, well, actually, phrenology was onto something.
See, I thought they disproved phrenology. I thought they completely got rid of that, and they were like, that has nothing to do with someone's intelligence quotient or whatever.
Is that like an ego thing? Is that like an ego thing more than anything else? Is to tell somebody, hey, the shape of your shit dictates who and how you think of yourself?
I don't think it was ego. I think they were just trying to figure it out scientifically.
Well,
but nobody likes to hear that, though.
No.
Nobody likes to hear that.
But that's...
Well, let's look at Darwin. Let's look at where it comes from, okay? Darwin, Darwin was, he wasn't like way up in the nobility, but, he was, lower in what they call part of the intellectual aristocracy. But, the Darwins, the Wedgwoods, and his cousin Francis Galton, the Galtons, they all interbred to try to make basically genius babies. I don't know if you're aware of this, but that you can actually see that they made family charts, right, to see like who were the smartest. And you had people all the way going like Leonard Darwin, who was also a president of the British Eugenics Society. Francis Galton's the one that came up with eugenics.
So they did all that math and didn't realize that inbreeding doesn't work real well?
I think they figured that out as they did it down the line, right? No. But somehow they thought
took one for the team. That one.
Some of them were, some of them turned out, or at least they were, they were put in very high places that would require academic degrees. So, like I said, Leonard Darwin, Major Leonard Darwin, he was a president of the British Eugenics Society, and then you had Charles Galton Darwin, who he was high up in eugenics as well. I think he might have had something to do with the Manhattan Project. So some of them were smart, but if you look if you look at how big the tree is, a lot of these people, like, who are these people, right? I mean, they didn't go on to be super intelligent.
No, it doesn't work that way.
But my point was that they were, yes, they did think they were special, right? They did think that their genes were special, and therefore people that look different, right? They came up with reasons why they were worse than, right? But what were you saying?
No, we all think we're special. Every individual, even watching this podcast, think they're special, right? That's a part of being human, though. This is a very human thing to think you're special. If you don't think you're special in some way, in any sense, you're not being human. Like, it's a very human thing.
There's a difference between thinking you're original, special, and unique, though, and then thinking that you're original, special, and unique, and that you need to pass on that and only that.
Man. Well, that comes with a heavy sense of ego, and that takes different placement. But I mean, I
divorced my wife, but it's okay. She said we could still be cousins.
Every human, like John, Paul, myself, and then Johnny here, all think we're special in like some way. Like that's a very humanistic attribute that you cannot get away from. There is not a human on board that has ever lived this life, however long ago, 500 years ago, or will live 500 years from now, that don't at one point think that they are special, because that's the human thing, and also want to be not special and intertwined with other people too. But that's just human nature. But I don't want to get into like human nature.
Now you're getting into like sociology.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that. But
we should break down that there was also two parts. There's two methods of eugenics. I wouldn't participate in either one of them, but I guess you could say one is potentially less. I don't know. I guess it's not necessarily racist, because it could just be brain stuff too. Elitist. There we go. Less elitist. So one is positive eugenics. Okay, positive meaning you focus on only breeding the best with the best, so to speak, right? The desirable genes with the desirable genes. So that's what they were doing when they interbred with each other. And,
some Nazi shit, right? Some Nazi shit.
Yeah, well, the Ubermensch, right? But the other part of the Nazi stuff was the negative eugenics, which meant getting rid of the inferior or quote-unquote undesirable genes, right? And so that was everything from what we're talking about now. So, like I say, it might be one thing to think like, oh, I'm special, for whatever reason, ego or whatever, and think I want someone that's special like me, and then, kind of gravitate to that could be one thing. It's maybe just a type of, weird type of nepotism or something. But then there's another element where then you go, and everybody that isn't like me needs to be not only away from me, but like totally out of the picture. And that's what this stuff was. And so it involved sterilization, euthanasia, abortion, and it could have also been, with Hitler, right? There was race hygiene, which meant anybody that, wasn't not just Anglo, but it had to be right, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, an Aryan or Aryan type.
If they weren't Aryan, they were unclean.
Yeah, right. And so anybody, right? So if you were any obviously Jewish people, black people, Eastern European people, right? And then it was like, and then you moved on to be like, if you were communist, if you were Jehovah's Witness, homosexuals, right? And then there was the mental hygiene. And the mental hygiene is, well, hey, even if you are Aryan and you, but your IQ's too low, you're still inferior. So, right, you had to have an IQ of a certain. So if you were below 100, 100 is average. You start going below 100, and you start getting names that go with them. And these names are like, once upon a time, were considered like scientific terms. You had idiot, imbecile, moron. Okay, and they're like every 10 points, you had a different name for those. Okay, and if you were any of those, fell in those lower categories, you could be sterilized. And that's really how Hitler got started. It was actually on like what they call it sometimes, the feeble-minded. Okay, and first it was like, hey, let's sterilize these people so that they don't make, because it cost us a lot of money to take care of them, so we'll just go ahead and sterilize them. And then later it was like, well, sterilize them until we don't have no more that are gonna be added, but still got to feed these people, so why don't we start to euthanize people? And then it moved on to, right, ethnic groups, and then everything, to religious ideologies and so forth. But in terms of other things that they did, would have called genetic. They would have said was genetic. Wasn't just like your IQ or your intelligence, but it would have been like, are you an alcoholic? Are you promiscuous? Are you a pauper? Or are you poor? In other words, like poverty, they thought was hereditary, right? So all of these things could have got you marked for abnormal genetics, and you could have been sterilized, or in Nazi Germany, you could have been put in a concentration camp, and maybe you were just worked to death, get some labor out of you before that, but a lot of times you would have been experimented on. And these are horrific experiments. After World War II, we had Project Paperclip, where we actually picked up a bunch of these Nazi doctors. Werner von Braun was one of them. But what the type of experiments they did was stuff like, at what temperature does a man freeze to death? So, put him in room temperature water, and then you turn it down a degree every however many minutes until, you measure his vitals and all that, and then when he dies, stuff like that. Could you inject Could you make someone have blue eyes if you inject dye? Is concrete an effective form of birth control? Right, all kinds of stuff like that. Could you remove a lymph nodes from a little kid and then bombard them with X-rays and see what happens? All kind of stuff like that. So they would also use these people for experiments, right? But to go back to what we talked about as far as what might be efficient about it, obviously I don't think anybody thinks that's a little too efficient, right? But this is the problem with when you start to do stuff like suggests or extrapolate out that what is maybe an inefficient genetic expression or even psychological expression, that somehow you can extrapolate out and say, well, if we just got rid of that in this individual and in society at large, everything would be either perfect or even just better. Ask that, you ask those people. Some people are happy with their proclivities, right? I mean, like, a good example is like, let's talk about let's just talk about like genetic engineering to get rid of diseases. So like, what did Stephen Hawking have? Was it muscular dystrophy or was it was that, am I right? Or is it a different?
It was MS. Or
multiple sclerosis, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now, hypothetically, let's say we figured out how to get rid of that. Nobody would have to live through the pain of that. I don't know too many people who wouldn't think that's an entirely admirable thing, but think about if we figured that out before Stephen Hawking was born, and now you don't have Stephen Hawking. All right, so same thing with Beethoven. Deafness. Deafness is, maybe I don't, probably most. I mean, I don't know. I don't speak for deaf people. I mean, but I think there's at least some or a lot that would maybe like to be able to hear. But if you were to just, maybe some people think it's a strength and like that, and are happy to communicate silently. But using Beethoven as an example, would he have made the same music if he had ears that could hear the same way?
Which we did that kind of stuff. We did that in the U.S. in like the late 40s and early 50s, and I don't really know anything about Project Paperclip. I don't know anything about that.
It's deep, bro. It's crazy.
No, I really don't. I don't know anything about that, but I know that in the late 40s and early 50s, we were doing the kind of thing where if you were like diagnosed whatever below 70 IQ, which was like moronic level, whatever, like that, you would get sent to not insane asylums. That's the wrong term, but you would get hospitalized just for being Down syndrome is the wrong term, but basically of a lower IQ, of a at the time moronic IQ. Like that's something that we did in the States for several years.
Hitler got those ideas from the United States, man. We got them for eugenics. Started in England. We basically corporatized it, funded it.
Why do they even call it eugenics? Why don't they just call it trying to play God? You know what I'm saying? Like, and who are these people to even do these things?
What's the best example of eugenics happening right now in the U.S.? Like, maybe I was outside pissing and I fucking missed it.
No, that's a question that I wanted to ask him as well.
Maybe I was outside pissing because I've been drinking way too many seltzers right now. I'm trying to hold it together, John. I'm trying to hold it together. Help me out now with this question. Make me sound intelligent for a second.
The stuff we were talking about had to do with how IQ and what they call mental hygiene was the second pillar of eugenics, the other being race hygiene. So that's how we get, and we said that for mental hygiene, it had a lot to do with IQ as a genetic propensity, and it also looked at brain size and phrenology. So moving forward, we have something called the precision education. This is the same theory, literally the same statistical numbers, and it comes out of the bell curve, which I have over here. It's right there. Have y'all heard of the bell curve, Charles Murray?
Yeah.
No, everybody's heard of a bell curve.
No, we know what a bell curve is.
I don't know about the Charles Murray part and all that, but
college.
a general bell curve.
I was in college for a semester, man. I know what a curve is.
Well, I thought maybe it's kind of pop culture because, like, Jordan Peterson is kind of in favor of the premises in there. Sam Harris is. I think Stefan Molyneux is pretty in line with it. But Charles Murray and a man by the last name of Sternstein, he's no longer alive, so I always just focus on Murray, who is still alive, who is a member of the Bilderberg group, by the way, and pushes online learning for workforce training, and thinks that not everybody should go to college. But this is a guy that also believes in the theory of precision education, basically. He believes in the genetic foundations of intellect and IQ. So in the bell curve in the 80s, Murray started to look at he basically dug up a lot of the old eugenics literature. If you look at the statistics like that he uses, or the numbers that he ends up with, they are almost identical to the statistics that they had that started with the tests on soldiers in World War I, moving all the way through up to the 50s and 60s, and through places like the Human Betterment Foundation, the American Eugenics Society, and then other state departments of health. And what he found was, or what his calculations said, were that he drew categories. So 100 is average. He put white people or Caucasians there in the middle, and then moving down would be people of color, so brown.
We're all
black,
idiots, by the way.
Native
People of
Americans.
Caucasian descent, we're fucking idiots. At least me.
So
at least
he
me.
has them at the top. So Ashkenazi Jews and then Asians on the top. Okay, and then he has those varying in terms of language and number, mathematics. In other words, they score very high or in the same range, but Asians, according to his numbers, are better with numbers, and the Ashkenazis are better with language. Okay.
Within that evidence that he had, or with those statistics, did everyone have the same opportunity to the same information? You know what I'm saying? Like growing up, did they have the same education as, if a colored person didn't have the same education as a white person? You know what I'm saying?
So what you're talking about is the environmental factor. Does he look at the environmental factor? Kind of does.
How big?
There's something called the Flynn Effect. Go ahead.
John, real quick, because I'm a thorough believer in environment more than anything else. I would like to think of myself as a little bit of a scientist. I think you could drop a DNA genetic version of me in a different scenario, and he would be way different talking to you right now. Given him in South Africa, he'd have an accent.
Talking like nature versus nurture.
No, absolutely. He'd have, which I'm not even going to attempt. He'd have an accent. He would have so much more different things that he dealt with in his life. So, how do you approach that?
So there's something called the Flynn Effect that Murray addresses, and they interpret it in different ways. All right, and so I don't know if this answers your question, but I'll throw this out there. I am in line with you. I'm not one that believes that things are just wired so much into you. I think that even the things that feel like they're wired into was just really early conditioning. That's what I believe. And part of that is because I've not been the same person, and by that I mean I've made very different changes, like 180s in my life, and that wasn't, you know what I mean? If it was genetic, or whatever, I feel like that those types of changes, those types of epiphanies and transformations aren't possible. But so the Flynn Effect works like this. So they did some studies. So one of the things, and to me this actually just raises more questions about the accuracy of IQ tests than it says about the environment or the genes. But so first they have to recalibrate IQ tests occasionally. I don't know if you know this, but they have to for what they call general gains in IQ, meaning the entire population gets this like general gain in IQ. And so, that's over the, like, so if you think about just generally like, everybody now is literate. There was a time when it was super rare to even be able to get to a school, right? And then over time, right, more people have access to schools and stuff, and so the average intelligence moves up. And so what they do is the 100 is always the average, right? And so if for some reason, the people in 100 start scoring higher all the time in terms of these bell curves, they just adjust the number, right? And so they say that we had a general gain. So this guy, his last name's Flynn. I can't remember. I want to say James. Yeah, James Flynn.
There you go.
He looks at that and says, aha, notice that everybody moves up. can move up with cultural, institutional, environmental changes. So he says this is proof that not that there's no genetic basis to intelligence. He doesn't go there because he does actually still believe in some of that. But he says that the environment is actually the stronger influence, and you can raise, the general and the individual level up by environmental changes. But Charles Murray looks at
people are adaptational. Like a human being is just you can adapt to your scenario, right?
Yeah,
basically.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Except that Charles Murray thinks that he looks at it and goes like this. So on those bell curves, right? What it means is so they chart the range, right? So by the way, Charles Murray would say, look, even though people in general from certain ethnic groups score 10, 100, 90, 80, 110, whatever, there's still that group itself has a bell curve, meaning like, right, there's two outliers where there's like not a lot of people, but then most of the people, that's why it gets fat in the middle. That's where most people score, and then people on the outliers, meaning super smart and super not smart people on either end, are going to be the rare, and then people are going to kind of average in the middle. So in other words, he says, okay, you can have super smart people or super not smart people from any group, okay? But when he looks at those and he sees those curves basically maintain the same spread, in other words, they reallocate the numbers, and he goes, well, whites are still at 100, people of color are still below that, and then you have Asians and Ashkenazi Jews being higher. He says, aha, look, even though everybody's IQ goes up, the disparity between the groups is the same, so that proves that it's genetic. See, and so they both use these same patterns to have totally different interpretations.
That could be culture or.
How do you help?
Who was he affiliated with? Where did he graduate from? What was he a part of?
So he's Harvard.
Okay.
Harvard. And like I said, he's Bilderberg Group as well.
So there you go. I mean, he can say that and put that out there, man. But it's very clear.
And yeah, let me tell you who he cites in his book. So do I have the full list? I don't have. I can probably remember most of them. It's a lot. Oh, here we go. This is going to get us to precision education. Okay. So it's a thick book, and if you want to just get a taste or just kind of get a sense of where, like you just said, where is he coming from? Where is he getting his research from? What is his background in terms of why he has this conclusion? Well, these are some of the people that he cites. Now, first of all, he cites all sorts of the old school eugenicists in there. He's got Galton in there. He's got Carl Pearson in there. He's got Friedrich Osborn, president of the American Eugenics Society. So he's got the old school ones in there. His numbers look the same as the stuff that was from the old school eugenicists. And then he's got people in here, most of whom were part of this thing called the Pioneer Fund, which was basically a eugenics organization, right? And there was the Nazi connection with Stefan Kuhl. I think the Oxford Press documents those connections well. But some of the people we're talking about these names might not pop up in any of your audience. Just Google their names and type eugenics after it, and you'll get tons of stuff. So Linda Gottfriedson. Once upon a time, you could have seen their interviews on YouTube with Molyneux. So he had a lot of these people on to give their pitches. But Linda Gottfriedson, okay. Let's see, Arthur Jensen, Felipe J. Rushton, Richard Lynn, okay. All of these people, like I said, if you Google them, they make claims about making the exact same arguments about how people of color should be sterilized, criminals should be sterilized.
So they're all racist, man. That's what it comes down to. That's what it seems like.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And then you have, who's the other guy? William Shockley, right? And William Shockley, he's the guy that set up the Nobel laureate, the Repository for Germinal Choice, which was the sperm bank that had all the geniuses or the Nobel laureates in it back in the 80s or the 90s. I think it's defunct now, but he set that up. And he said, well, you shouldn't sterilize, people with low IQs or black people or whatever, but you should hand out incentives to have them voluntarily give themselves to be vivisectioned or to be sterilized. So he said, you shouldn't forcibly do it, but we should pay them. He was saying you give people bonuses for this, and then have other people donate these Nobel laureates.
Man,
that's ridiculous.
Man, I have a weird separate
How does
on that.
How does the education system even allow people to get into positions of power like that? And my only answer to that would be money or family being born into that and being allowed into that type of position to come out with these, and the amount of factors that would go into this curve book or whatever you call it, that there's no way that they could possibly account for all the factors in today's society that goes on with why they would even come up with those numbers. That's crazy, man. That's insane.
And then and look, you said how did they get the journal Intelligence, the academic journal, scholarly journal, peer reviewed, it's got a bunch of PhDs on the board. That's the people on the board either are or were Linda Gottfriedson, either Arthur Jensen or Richard Lynn, one or the other, could have been both. James Flynn and Robert Plowman, and I want to say that James Flynn and Robert Plowman I think they're still on it. So when you go in the Journal of Intelligence, and I got a bunch of quotes in my book, in the Eugenics chapter, they still say this. Talk about the same numbers. There's literally arguments in there where they say things like I said, physiognomy and phrenology. There's actually something to it, and we should look back at it, because now that we've got these more precise facial recognition algorithms, now our biometrics are more precise. We can actually, it's less anecdotal somehow, they think. So they're trying to use their improved technologies to basically take all that theory and give it another shot. And that's the most disgusting part about it. And,
it sounds awful. It sounds awful. Why not go back to the OG style where women are the gatekeepers of all life, right?
I'm not sure how that relates. I mean, we can do that. I don't know how that relates to the IQ stuff, though.
No, I don't know either. I don't know either. To the IQ shit.
I still don't get it, man. I don't get how. Yeah, that it's leading into what's happening right now, obviously.
Well, IQ is. I mean, he even mentioned it. John, you even mentioned it earlier. IQ has never been a measurement of actual intelligence. That's why it's called intelligence quotient, and it also changes with time because the average changes. So I took IQ tests when I was like in 6th grade, and the numbers I got in 6th grade aren't going to be the same now. It completely changes because the tests change, the world around you changes, and they change the actual numbers themselves as time progresses because it's just based on a generalized average of the population.
Yeah, okay, absolutely. And check this out. How does genetic propensity, how is that calculated? How are genetics calculated? So, we like to think it's such a precise science that it's like causal. Like, when they say like you have a genetic propensity towards this, we want to think it's like a causal relationship, right? Cause and effect. You have this gene, you have this DNA structure, you have this sequence of A, T, C, and G in particular order, and that has a direct cause on your phenotype, your physiology. That's not how it works. It's correlative. It's correlation, meaning, right? This is how they determine whether or not a gene, the genotype, actually expresses a particular phenotype. They take a bunch of samples. This is why they want to get, with the Precision Medicine Initiative, they want millions of people's samples, because statistics and induction works by, right, the bigger the sample, the more precise the average is, right? The more precise those statistics are. So they're looking at everybody that has this particular sequence of adenine, guanine, tyrosine, and cytosine. They want to see, does that relate to, or is there a correspondence or a correlation to a particular phenotype? I mean, it could be anything from your, physical characteristics to a particular disease or your IQ. Now, we said, like with the stuff with the Punnett square, it's pretty precise. You can be pretty accurate. But with the stuff with like IQ or other psychological conditions, it's not that high. So the percentage for some things can be up in the 90s. When you're talking IQ, we're talking maybe 50% accuracy, and it's not a 1-to-1 ratio, or even a sequence to a one phenotype ratio. In my book, I get it mixed up. It's either 50 or 500 different genes.
It's a big difference.
That contribute to whatever your supposed genetic IQ is, right? So like what you're saying is, where I think what you're getting at is like even their own data based on what they want to say the DNA does to your intelligence is not very accurate to begin with, right? I mean, we're looking at a whole host of different genes, and you're telling me that the efficacy, the percentage, is incredibly low to begin with. Aside from everything we just said about environment, right? And so, no, I mean, I don't think those tests are accurate or precise in any way to begin with. Yeah,
we have plenty of examples of people coming out of a non-stimulus environment to where they were and just excelled in things, you know, to where they were like basically brought up to be, you know, oh, you're never going to be this. But then they ended up being that person. Like, human genetics is a mystery still.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh
absolutely.
man, I'm doing a poor job at coming over to this mic, but I want to take advantage of it while Paul takes a piss outside.
Yeah, no, but the DNA part, and they know that there's limitations to this, and this is why eugenics eventually becomes transhumanism, right? Because, you know, once upon a time, if you look at the old literature, it was, you know, the two scientific fields of, you know, the psychology and biology or eugenics kind of had this competition that was like nature versus nurture. You know, you probably heard this cliche, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The modern development of neuroscience kind of blends the two together, because we talked about, I think, a lot the stimulus response method of psychological conditioning last time, and how you can implement that through external stimuli. So it could just be, you know, if we're talking about learning or education, it could be like question answer stimuli, lecture stimuli, etc. And then your response could be, you know, whatever question answer, dialogue, or your rebuttal orally, etc. And then there could be conditioning at that level. But and what that's actually doing, if the conditioning is scheduled properly, it's supposed to be bypassing much of the thinking and kind of getting a reflexive response. Neurology, basically, I mean, it entirely bypasses the cognitive processing of the stimuli and can, you know, largely wire into the biology, and so you have chemical impulses through the biology, and you kind of merge the two. So eugenics
You're talking
is
about the human, just how humans are, right?
What do you say it again? Go ahead.
Like, just how humans are, like stimulus to things and how humans are. Right?
Yeah, I mean, literal electric, like you're talking about being a robot later, right? I mean, it's like instead of having what?
No, not being a robot, not being a robot, but we definitely change based upon every moment to moment thing that happens, and this is just how we like live our lives, and can be dismal, it can be beautiful, depending on, you know, the perception, all these things throughout human life. But I don't know. You're nodding your head right now.
So
my bad. I'm doing a horrible job of like having some continuation of this podcast right now. My bad, man.
You're good, Jesse.
Fine. You're good. So I think what I was trying to get at, or I was suggesting, was that the biology and the psychology gets combined because instead of trying to create the new man or the new human by just re-engineering the genetics, can actually just replace parts of the machine with computer technology, and at that level you're actually integrating the psychology and the biology through the signal, so that you're transmitting either through your neural link. I don't know if we talked about that last time,
so transhumanism in a sense is bypassing eugenics, because you're getting around. Eugenics had this goal of creating the perfect being in general, not necessarily a goal, but through eugenics you have the ability to quote unquote create the perfect being. But now you can do this through technology regardless of genetic makeup.
Right, exactly. Now I think the way my research breaks it down is they kind of look at both still, in the sense that you have like the genetics is like the hardware, and then the neuroscience, which uses computer electronics to, you know, interface the brain with the body, is the software. And so it looks like the software does have some dependence on the original hardware. In other words, right? Perhaps, you know, if your IQ or whatever, your brain capacity according to their algorithms is not of a certain percentage, that perhaps, you know, you need a different type of neural link, okay, a different upgrade or whatever. But yes, it's, you know, Julian Huxley, who is the president of the British Eugenics Society, was also the first director general of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. And if you ever,
that's a mouthful.
UNESCO is easier. I just always say the whole thing. UNESCO. You can read UNESCO, its purposes and its philosophy, free on you can Google it or search it or whatever, and you get the PDF, and then do a keyword search. Like, hit the control button, control F, and you get a little search box, and type in eugenics, and you can see in there, this is after we found out about Hitler's concentration camps and his master race philosophy. Julian Huxley in there is telling us that, yeah, you know, Hitler was bad, or that race hygiene stuff was bad, and we shouldn't do that. But eugenics is still important, and it will be important for the global future, right? He also has Malthusian stuff in there about optimum population size and stuff like that. And also I should mention that his buddy, Archibald MacLeish, Bonesman Archibald MacLeish, Bonesman, that means member of Skull and Bones, he helped him write the UNESCO Constitution as well. But Julian Huxley, he also coined the term transhumanism later on. And there's a book, it's in a book called New Bottles for New Wine. It's a play on a biblical metaphor about the new man, right, through the recreation of the Spirit and Christ and all that. He's playing on it, and, you know, you're the new bottle and the new man is transhumanism through evolution, and he basically, that's where he coins the term transhumanism. And so this is the point where they kind of go, well, you know, it's more than just the genetics. And if you read Brave New World, okay, that's Julian Huxley's brother, Aldous Huxley. Chapter 1 is all about eugenics. Chapter 2 is all about psychological conditioning. You know, all this always, I think they always kind of had an idea that the two went together, even though it was always kind of two separate schools. But transhumanism is where it comes together today. So, and that's now brain-computer interfaces. You got people like Ray Kurzweil, Elon Musk, Yuval Noah Harari.
And they're saying what, like by the year 2030 or 2035, or is what Elon Musk was saying, when Neuralink would actually be able to go into everyone. But so, if you had to give it a time limit, do you think in our lifetime we will see us integrate with technology? And I'm with you, John. I don't want to. I think that humans could evolve in a separate way. I'm on a complete opposite side of the spectrum as these two right here.
I think it'll happen sooner than later.
Because, and back to earlier in the conversation, like I've had multiple conversations with Johnny and Jesse, and they're saying that it's the evolution of human beings is to become part of technology and AI and to form as one. Where I'm in the disagreements and saying that I think that humans could evolve, but in a separate way over time. Now, the time that we're in right now, I know it would suggest that, hey, we're just gonna evolve with technology. But like I said, I think if we gave it more time and didn't go with technology, and I know this sounds weird, I think we would evolve in our own ways. Maybe into gray aliens, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But something different, something better, the human way. We don't have to go that route. But sorry to go on a tangent.
The human way, real quick, sorry. The human way has always been technology, though. Because you act as if using...
Not necessarily. I mean, we don't even...
No, it has.
What about the pyramids? How'd they build the pyramids? You know what I'm saying?
Let me finish what I'm going to say. The human way of transforming, progressing, evolving, whatever you want to call it, has always had some semblance of technology connected to it. You can talk about how putting chips in your head so that you can see Google in your fucking eyes is crazy. Like that's transhumanism, that you're putting computer parts in you and you're doing all these things. But we have always taken tools and formed them into a part of our life. I mean, you're talking about way back in the day with the wheel
into your life, but not into your body, not into your brain. It makes you human.
Progression.
And this is what I was saying, John. We'll never agree. So
I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm saying it's bound to happen.
So my question was, what's the timetable, in your opinion?
So, you know, you said 2030, 2035. Those are the timelines for the singularity that people like Kurzweil and others toss out there. Then there's the Russia 2045 projects. I guess that's a few years later. You know, I was on the Ed Opperman show, I want to say January. It wasn't very long before COVID, and he asked me something to the same question, basically. And I said what I just said. But then I said, well, you know, if you have unless there's a big crisis, you know, and stuff can accelerate fast, and it's like a month later.
Damn. Here we are. Yeah.
Oh man, dude. Did Musk say because I'm pretty sure this is the third time he's presented this. He had it in the pigs. And I thought he was saying that he was going to be ready for human trials this year. Am I correct?
He said worldwide availability for the average man in 2030.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think you're going to probably see. I mean, I'm thinking you're going to see that way faster than that. At least in a handful of people, I'm thinking.
That's what I said, man. The fact that you look at something as simple as like magnets in the fingertips, which seems so like arbitrarily like caveman-esque, or you know what I mean, like Neanderthalian compared to now. Like we're gonna get there whether we want to or not. It's going to happen.
I know we're past that point, man. I'm well aware of that, but it's always interesting to hear the other side. For me on this topic especially. But John, we're getting close to the end of the podcast here. I just wanted to ask you another question as well. How's been the transformation of teaching during the epidemic that we're currently in?
That was
right
my
now?
question at the beginning that I never asked.
Oh man, it's super messy, man. It's super messy. I was saying, some of my colleagues use more colorful language. I won't use. One person asked me, he teaches my friend Andy Lisbon. What's Left is the podcast. Check it out. It's got the What's Left podcast. And he asked me, we just because he teaches as well, and so we're buddies now. We talk just about school sometimes, and he's, hey, look at these policies or whatever, or, these new things we got going on. And give me what you think, and we kind of share ideas. And at one point he asked me something. He's like, "Are they breaking it on purpose, or he's like, it's just so chaotic and so messy that like, do they know it's like this, or is it?" I said, I think it's basically something more like a beta test or QA. So they had all this technology sitting on the shelf, and they're just like, use it, and then they're just going to data track everything while we're using it, and then they're going to say, oh, this worked and this didn't, and the stuff that didn't work, the solutions are going to be, we need more software, we need more adaptive learning, we need some biofeedback wearables, there's disconnectivity. Some of the stuff that goes on seems so counterintuitive that he was kind of asking, like, is it just total, like, is it just so messy because of COVID and like just nobody knows what they're doing? Is it or is it something else? And I think there's at most levels from the bottom going up, it's a lot of people just, they don't know what they're doing. They're just trying to get the money going through. They're trying to get that CARES money. They're trying to get the technology out. They're trying to figure out how to teach some kind of lesson through the virtual software. But if you want to look at it maybe at the level of not just the ed tech companies, not just the Department of Education, but also maybe some of the trustees or administrators or state school board members, or even maybe some of the tops of some of the way up there in the national unions, even because a lot of the unions seem to be pushing more of the online learning and the ed tech stuff. Don't want people to go back to school. It seems to me that they're. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Jump in.
I mean, I was just gonna say that it's crazy that you bring up the whole like, oh, maybe they're running it as like a beta test or QA, quality, like something like that. When it's funny, all these things that they're trying now, I could easily see them trying in the past, but with like parents being like, no, we're not really for this. We don't really agree with this. We're not okay with this. I mean, parents had problems with Common Core math in the past. You know what I mean? For them to be like, oh, we're going to teach these kind of different school things over the internet. They're never going to have to come in, all this different stuff. It seems like stuff that they would have attempted in the past and they weren't able to because people would have disagreed. But now it's like, not only are they able to, people are for it because they're like, yeah, it's going to protect my kids. They don't have to go to school. They're going to, everything's fine. No COVID, blah, blah, blah. Like, man, you talk about a beta test. Like, this was the time to fucking do it.
Oh yeah, I mean, and you're all right. Because there's a lot of people that are still very scared of the COVID. Even though most like 90% more, 99% of kids don't. They
Yep.
say, oh, if you're asymptomatic, they can carry it around. I'm getting away on a tangent, but where I was going with the other comment was right, and on top of that, some of the policies, like I said, maybe it's just messiness, maybe it's just a bunch of people just because it's new this. New rules all the time, new regulations all the time, new requirements every day, last minute assignments. So it could be a lot of just messiness. But some of the things are odd, like where they say stuff like, you have to be on your camera as the teacher and you have to record what you're doing, but they don't have to be in the modules synchronously to listen to you. Even though, so why do I have to go and be in the module? So you're incentivizing disconnection by doing that. You know what I mean? Like, I can only be I've got 6 classes between 2 different community colleges. I can't be available for all 6 of them 24 hours a day. So it's like some of them are like hybrid synchronous / asynchronous. So you just meet like once a week or something, but they don't have to show up when they're there. I mean, so what I'm getting at is going back to the QA beta test thing. When they start saying things like there's too much disconnection, there's not enough instant feedback. Well, some of that isn't just the problem with the technology and we need more software to plug in those holes. Some of it just has to do with how we're facilitating it. And when I look at that, it's like I said, it might just be, people just kind of ad hoc, spitballing there, on the fly. But I've also I've also explained, just knowing what I know and looking far on the line, like, if we do this like this is what's going to happen. Like, you're going to incentivize adaptive learning software. That's going to disincentivize having more instructors because you're going to have more automated feedback. And there's already been weird things with enrollment, like in assignments, meaning like people don't have the same size loads. And somebody told me basically that, like, yeah, now I kind of see what you're saying. So again, I see different dimensions of it, but I feel like, just like we talked about with Event 201 and all this stuff, that there are, at the higher echelons of administration,
It's the great
people they're breaking it on purpose. Sorry.
It's the great reset, man. Like you talked about earlier, and the video that came out was very shocking. And I know these two haven't seen the video yet for the great reset. And you said that was, I know I can find the video. Is it on the John Hopkins as well?
Okay,
or
so
that's
the
UN, right?
One is what is for the first thing we talked about,
right?
And then the Great Reset. Yeah, I think you can go on World Economic Forum, their website. They got a whole. I think they might have a separate website for that, or it's at least one of the front pages on it's We Forum, WE Forum is World Economic Forum. So you could do We Forum and Great Reset, and the other one, the Event 201. I looked at it on YouTube. It just popped up there, but it was, you can go to John Hopkins' channel and it should be in there,
Whenever the World Economic Forum comes out and says we need to do a great reset, I mean, think about those words and think about what that means and what it entails. Especially whenever there's a pandemic going on right now, when there's an election going on right now, when there's a division between the country when it comes to race because of what the media is doing right now. And they're talking about this is the best and greatest opportunity for a great reset. I think that's what people really need to focus on because, in my opinion, and I'm most likely wrong, something's going to happen, man. And it's going to be crazy, and it's just, I don't know. Just all seems too weird to me.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to this idea about, is it evolution or is it some kind of a conspiracy, right? Right? So, I mean, all right, look, to me, this is how I look at it. You guys tell me your thoughts on it, because this is totally just an idea. I'm not really committed to it. But, so if it's evolution, to me, that is a spontaneous, natural thing that happens through the aggregate of all the diversity of competing biological, psychological, environmental influences. It is not some type of hierarchical top-down control or something like that. Now, maybe I'm wrong with that, but let's say, give or take, whether that is or not, the second layer to that is if it whether that is the function of evolution or not, like some sort of top down progression. I can't think that if that is just what natural evolution is, I can't think that that's something that we want to like encourage too quickly or too much, because what are we talking about? We're talking about, just like you said, with the Great Economic Reset. Who's resetting this? It's not me. I didn't ask to reset. You know what I mean? So, we're living in a time where I can say, right? You know what I mean? Like, look, if we're going to evolve into computers, just let it happen. Why is the Great Economic Reset, by definition, is an acceleration into the fourth industrial revolution through biotech, psychometrics, brain-computer interfaces, the Internet of Things, social credit, all this stuff.
All the scary shit.
It's getting handed down to us from the same oligarchs, the same multinational corporations, some of them like the Rockefeller Foundation, which funded the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for Anthropology, Human Heredity, and Eugenics, where they did eugenic experiments under Hitler's regime. You can go on their Rockefeller Foundation. You can look at their annual reports. I didn't make that up. IBM's Watson that they have that does education, automated education. That's named after Thomas J. Watson. You all know who Thomas J. Watson was of IBM?
I know what IBM Watson is. I don't know who Thomas J. Watson is, though.
It's named after him, and he's the guy that signed the I pulled it out. I was showing my friend the other day. I could pull it out and forget what I'm saying like I did last time. IBM's Thomas J. Watson was the man that signed the contracts to run the IBM punch card system to calculate the data that Hitler ran through his eugenics experiments in the concentration camps. So when they did all that stuff, I was going to show you the book because it's got a facsimile, a photocopy of the IBM punch card system with the Nazi symbol on it. Okay, and so like I said, they didn't just execute people there; they did all kinds of experiments on them, and they tabulate the data through the IBM punch card system. And another layer to it is that IBM did not just hand out the machines and the punch cards; they leased them, and they had to process the data. You had to do it with the headquarters in New York, so they knew what they were doing. And Thomas J. Watson was the man that brokered it. He's the man who they named the IBM artificial intelligence after, that does everything from finances, it can do security, it can do healthcare stuff, and it can do education. It's got an online automated learning app, partners with Pearson Education Corporation. So this is the man, right? This is the company that funded eugenics. They name it after, or they name their AI after him. So this is, yeah.
I was just going to say, it's pretty accurate too. Like, to put it in layman's terms for a couple of people out there, like, IBM Watson is the same AI technology that Vegas used, and they bought part of it, whatever, for sports betting. So, like, Vegas odds, all the Vegas odds, like NFL games and everything like that, every Vegas odd that you bet and whatnot is based off of IBM Watson. And I don't think it's called that anymore because they purchased a part of it and developed them themselves and changed it into a different company or whatever. But it was originally based off of IBM Watson. And let's be honest, how much money is Vegas losing?
Yeah.
Well, another interesting I should note too is because, look, they want us to. They act like the cutting edge of technology is itself evolution. You want to keep up with that. You want to keep interfacing with it. You want to integrate with it. You want to keep moving forward with it. You don't want to be left behind. But maybe I shouldn't say too much about where I met the person, because the project isn't done yet. But the person's naval intelligence, all right, and told me in a conversation, we were just chatting, and I was like, naval intelligence, like what does that even mean? Oh, you're on a boat with a bunch of computers reading satellites and stuff. Well, the person told me that he said the military will never get away from punch cards. They'll always keep punch cards because you can't hack it digitally, and even if the power goes out, you can still run it. With a flashlight or whatever, all you gotta do is run light through it. So the missile codes or whatever that's on the punch card, it changes on the tape. So while they want us to just totally get rid of your analog camera, get rid of your analog everything, and just they're not. So think about that. Right?
We still use numbers towers. That's like broadcast over what is that called? What does FM stand for? whatever, I don't know, FM radio, whatever, just basic radio frequencies. We still use numbers towers to communicate, like, on a government level for, like, for lack of a better term, spies and shit. I can't think of the technical term, but, like, we communicate like that all the time. You can tune into them right now. If you tune into a low enough frequency or whatever, and you'll literally, they're all over the U.S. They literally just broadcast numbers constantly. But for the people those are important for, they pick up on that. Because it doesn't go out. You can't fuck with it.
Right. So I mean, you know, you're right. You touched on something about the technology being the driver of evolution. This is one of the most evolutionary theorists will agree, right? I mean, have you ever seen probably seen it, Space Odyssey 2001?
Yeah. I actually watched that for the first time like 2 months ago. First time in my life.
Yeah, it's the opening scene, right? The whole opening scene is, right, so you got the Australopithecus
with the monkeys, the apes, whatever, the ape men.
And remember, so they start off on all fours, and they're beefing over this water at night. It gets nighttime. They gotta hide at night because the predators, when the sun comes in and come out, they can live with these. They're side by side with these vegetarian animals. They're vulnerable to animals, and they find this obelisk. Right, it's kind of like an obelisk. It doesn't have a period, but it's like this perfect rectangle. And then there's something, you know, I don't know, spiritual or cosmic or alien about this thing. It really has a lot of occult significance. I know we didn't get into Skull and Bones or whatever. Maybe we'll do it another time.
I was gonna say, if you're willing to come back on, that's definitely something we should cover in the future. Is the Skull and Bones?
100%.
Oh yeah, that'll be cool. We can do that. But this would relate, which is. So if you've ever seen, we'll just use the one of the most well-known, I guess, occult societies, the Freemasons, right? Freemasons got the square and compass, right? Right. So the square, right, is for architecture and engineering. Square is how you draft your angles. The compass is for your curved line. This is the beginning of architecture, engineering, geometry, in other words, right? And that's what the G in the middle is for. So the G is for geometry, God, and gnosis. So all those things go together. So you can achieve gnosis through understanding abstract geometry, and by doing that, you can understand the God particle or the God principle, or you can become your own God through your geometric gnosis. That's basically what it means. Okay, and that's what that opening scene is. Okay, so he's looking at the little monkeys are sitting there. They look at the obelisk. That's the perfect. It's a perfect rectangle. That's your angle or your square. What's above it is the moon, the crescent moon. That's the circle. And he's looking at it, and he sees the circle, right? That's your compass. And he looks down, and he sees the same exact shape. I can't see my finger doing it. I'm up here doing this. You can't see it. He sees the same shape down on the ground. It's a bone. It's a broken bone. And he's looking at it, and he's abstracting. He's noticing the same shape, the same principle of the geometric circle in both the moon and the bone. And so now he starts messing with the bone. He sees, oh, I got leverage. I can smash stuff with this. Now he learns how to use the angle, the curvature for leverage. Now he uses it as a weapon. So he starts walking on his feet, right? That's when they start walking on their feet instead of on their. So this is where we become Homo erectus. This is the first stage of evolution. So through all the knowledge of geometry and leverage, later architecture and engineering, you're able to take this stick, this bone, right, and create an advantage over your environment with it, right? And then he goes and kills the other monkey, takes over the water. Now you can take over resources, and you can therefore, spread out and multiply. But then afterwards, right, he goes and throws it up in the sky. And remember what happens when it gets to the sky? It's spinning, and then it spins, and all of a sudden it fades into a space station. So what are they saying, right? They're saying through the principles of abstract geometry, right? Those enable you to understand technology, and it's actually through technology, not through biological evolution.
That you evolve.
Yes, that you evolve, absolutely, right. And so the next phase for someone like Ray Kurzweil is you just take those geometric algorithms. I mean, look at facial recognition. What is it? It's a signature. What's the signature? It's a bunch of triangles. They're in a unique pattern. So in other words, you take the aggregate of the angles within the triangles, you add it together, you get one overarching number or algorithm. Right, so you're using the principles of geometrics to create biometrics, and then through biometrics you can create biotechnology, and now through computing you can literally interface with that and do stuff with, like you said, VR and AR and right? And transcend this physical material world and go into some kind of, VR Valhalla and be your own God and do whatever you want. This is the philosophy of transhumanism or posthumanism.
That's deep, man.
Crazy.
Yeah. Well, like I said, man, next time I think we should definitely hit Skull and Bones. I think we hit eugenics hard, transhumanism hard. A lot of that is important today. I still haven't watched 2001 Space Odyssey. I watched like maybe the first 30 minutes long time ago, so I still need to watch that. But
it's hard to get through, dude, because we're so used to so much talking and action. Like even for me, like
I know
it's a lot of open spaced scenes where it's like, I mean, and this spoiler alert, this isn't really a spoiler. I mean, there's a scene that lasts 2.5 minutes that's literally a shuttle landing. That's it. It's just a shuttle landing, and it's 2.5 minutes, which 2.5 minutes doesn't seem long, but that's a long fucking time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, dude, I'm the same. It took me several tries to get through it. It was only when I started thinking more about what I said, I was like, I gotta watch it again. So yeah.
So when is this documentary going to be released? I know you can't go too much into detail, but what can you say about it?
Okay, so what can I say about it?
Or was I even supposed to say anything about it?
I don't know. That's cool, man. I mean, I think I can say something. Man. Well, let's just put it this way, because I don't know how to. They don't want to be known who they are yet. People that filmed it, let's say that.
I was like, worst come to worst, where can our viewers out there find you?
It should be on Netflix next month. It should be, what they I don't know, because like I can't be.
That's awesome.
The people are undercover, okay? And so if everything they told me was true, it's going to be on Netflix, and it's going to be a surprise, meaning October surprise, and that's all I'll say for now. But Charlotte Iserbeek will be in it. My friend Lois Weiner will be in it, who very, very famous union activist, PhD, I think New Jersey University or New Jersey City University. Alex Newman. So there'll be a lot of big names in this realm of research. So I don't know if that was.
That's perfect, man. I guess
it should be really cool.
John's about to be in a documentary. That's what we should just say, and that's awesome, man. To spread the knowledge that you have to as many people as possible, I think is very important. If you guys want to find John, like I said, you just search, or you just go into your tab on Google and you go to schoolworldorder.info. Check out his webpage there. You can honestly buy his book there before I would buy it from Amazon, but you can
buy it from TrineDay. That's what actually gets them the more money or whatever instead of Amazon.
Cool.
It's buying it off of I think it's Trine.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, like I say, Amazon, it helps me to gauge how many I'm selling, but I got my one. I was hoping to get a number one at some point. Maybe that'll happen after this documentary.
That would be awesome, man. And if you want to take one of John's classes, I don't know what college he works at, but John, I might have to hit you up and take one of your classes, man. That'd be pretty fun.
It'll be online virtually, so it won't be as fun as it would have been if you actually.
Well, that's what I'm saying though. I could actually take it virtually and stay here where I'm at in Missouri.
That's right. That is correct. Yeah. Well, let's see what happens, because actually, I'll tell you something that you want to. After I went to film, this is probably good to say this on the thing, anyways. I had some strange emails after that, and one of them, person just for no reason was they're going to report me to my department. I don't know for what, because all I did was try to talk to them. Literally, we were talking about Charlotte, and it had nothing to do with. Anyways, and the other one was a strange ad. I won't go in anymore, but it could have been construed as maybe a threat, and maybe it wasn't. So. Maybe I won't have B teaching soon, but I'll let you know.
That's deep, man.
Let's keep that. Let's see how this turns out before I toss that around for more people to harass me on. Now that I am potentially over the target, I don't know.
Well, you are spreading knowledge that could, again, make your life extremely dangerous. So.
And that's not hype for the documentary either. So that's some. Remember I told you we talked beforehand. It says all kind of chaos they're trying to manage and so. Yeah, and so. But anyways, yeah. So I don't know. We'll talk again though, and I'll tell you we'll do the Skull and Bones thing, because I don't know if I said that I went and visited Charlotte, so I got to look in the books Right?
No, that'll be. We were supposed to talk about it this time, and it'll be super interesting. We just got super into eugenics, and I enjoyed the conversation about eugenics, transhumanism, genetics, everything there, like machine learning, all of that. It's
100, man. So good luck with everything. Good luck with the documentary. Hopefully it comes out well and everything works itself out. Good luck with everything that you're doing, sir. And thanks for joining Talk Junkies.
Thanks for coming on, John.
Thanks for having me again, guys. Happy to be back anytime, man.
We'll see you later, man.
Have a good one.
Peace.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We'll leave it at that. I think it was a pretty good podcast. Again, check out his book, School World Order. You can find it on Amazon or whatever Johnny said. I'll put it in the links below as well, so you can find it there. Go to his website, schoolworldorder.info. He's got a lot of great information, past interviews he's done with all the things that he does. But the best thing you can do for this video, obviously like the video, share the video, subscribe to Talk Junkies if you enjoy our content. To all our junkies out there,
Stay fly and ring the bell.
Eh.
I need to go the fuck home. That's what I need to do.
You good?
Yeah, no, I am good. But I need